late October in London, freezing rain poured down outside number 10 as Starmer announced the dissolution of Parliament. It was a desperate gamble after 7 million Britons flooded the streets to protest his digital prison ID plan. Energy bills had soared 52% since he took office, and food prices were spiraling out of control. Instead of stepping aside, he was taking a risky bet on the future of Britain. Downing Street was in chaos. Westminster was silent. This was not reform. It was a fight for survival, and tonight, the nation teetered on the edge of a political storm that could change everything. Subscribe now, because what happens next will shake Britain to its foundations. Within minutes of Starmer's announcement, London exploded. Sirens screamed through the freezing air as thousands poured into Westminster Square, waving drenched flags and chanting, "No digital prison. Starmer must go." Their voices bounced off the stone walls of Parliament. Reporters from BBC, GB News, and Sky crowded under umbrellas, broadcasting the chaos live as riot vans lined the streets. Inside Downing Street, advisors scrambled while opposition leaders pounced. Nigel Farage called it a desperate move by a desperate man. "Reform, UK posted within seconds. Britain deserves leadership, not lockdown politics." Even senior Labour figures were seen leaving Westminster quietly. Social media erupted. #Starmer out. Digital prison. UK protests, millions of mentions within an hour. Across the country, lights flickered in protest vigils from Manchester to Glasgow. For many, this was no longer politics. It was payback. As midnight approached, the capital shook between anger and fear. Police shields reflected the glow of burning placards. Journalists whispered about emergency meetings inside number 10. For the first time in decades, Britain felt leaderless, a nation adrift, caught in the storm its own prime minister had unleashed. Britain had snapped, patience was gone, fear was gone. All that remained was rage across every city. The same chant cut through the rain. "We are not prisoners, we are not data." From Glasgow to Bristol, crowds pounded their fists against the cold iron gates of power. They held up their bills for 170 for heat, 9 for bread, shouting the same question. "How much more will you take from us?" The digital prison ID, once sold as protection, now tracked, froze, and denied. Thousands reported locked bank accounts, rejected hospital entries, cancelled benefits, all because they refused to verify. The government called for calm. Calm was dead. Britain refused to obey. The nation that once queued in silence had found its voice, roaring through the rain. Inside Westminster, panic spread faster than the rain outside. Labour headquarters was a war zone. Phones rang non-stop. Aides shouted. MP turned on each other. Leaks poured into the media. Cabinet meetings were in disarray. MP demanded an emergency vote of confidence. Some ministers refused to appear on TV, afraid of the public backlash. Others called Starmer a man who had dissolved his own government to save himself. Protesters projected his face onto the walls of Westminster. One word underneath, liar. Meanwhile, sources close to Buckingham Palace confirmed the king was deeply worried about the nation's stability, but remained silent. Behind the scenes, advisors debated constitutional options, a move unseen in modern times. Inside number 10, Starmer paced alone, the prime minister of a government that no longer existed. The vacuum of power did not last long. Nigel Farage sensed opportunity. Within hours, he stepped onto the steps of Reform UK HQ, flanked by cameras and thunder. "This isn't leadership," he declared. "It's surrender." Farage promised a people's revolt to end the digital prison system and reclaim Britain. Across the city, volunteers handed out flyers calling for a government of truth. Meanwhile, the Conservatives regrouped. Former ministers criticized Starmer's arrogance and incompetence. Liberal Democrats demanded inquiries into data misuse and political manipulation, but Farage stole the spotlight. His broadcast hit 12 million views overnight. He called the current Labour leadership a regime of fear and digital control. His words cut through the noise, raw, defiant, populist. By morning, polls showed a historic shift. Reform UK surged to 28%, Labour fell to 19%, the establishment trembled. For the first time, a Farage-led Britain felt possible. Markets opened to chaos, the pound dropped 8% overnight, the sharpest fall since Brexit. Trading screens flashed red. City analysts called it a confidence collapse. Banks restricted withdrawals. Mortgage rates jumped past 7%, pushing thousands of families to the brink. Food suppliers warned of shortages within weeks as imports stalled. Fuel prices rose 11p in a single day. Economic pain hit faster than any riot. News anchors spoke in disbelief. Supermarkets rationed essentials, bread, milk, fuel. Social media was full of images of pensioners in darkness because they couldn't afford to switch the lights on. The digital ID system worsened the crisis. Technical verifications froze thousands of accounts. People couldn't access pay. The government blamed system overload. Citizens called it punishment. By dusk, the Bank of England held an emergency meeting. Leaked minutes revealed one phrase: public confidence had collapsed. The nation was trapped in a cycle of fear, a digital economic nightmare. As trading ended, a financial reporter muttered on live TV, "It's no longer about markets, it's about survival." Across London's skyline, the lights of the financial district flickered, as if the city itself was running out of power. The world watched and panicked. In Washington, the White House released a cautious statement calling Britain's situation concerning. European leaders urged restraint. Behind closed doors, diplomats admitted what no one wanted to say. The United Kingdom had become the unstable core of the West. Global news networks ran the same headline: Britain in digital revolt. Stock markets in Frankfurt and Paris tumbled on fears of contagion. The EU froze trade talks until London restored order. Even NATO allies questioned if Britain could still lead. Meanwhile, Russia mocked the chaos as a taste of Britain's own medicine. China stayed quiet, but state media looped footage of riots with the caption, "Democracy in meltdown." Within hours, international investors pulled 80 billion from UK markets. Travel warnings were issued. Foreign journalists camped outside Westminster, reporting a democracy collapsing under its own technology. In a chilling twist, leaked documents revealed cyber attacks on government servers, exploiting the same digital ID system that was supposed to protect the nation. For decades, Britain had shaped the world. Now the world watched Britain unravel. Starmer reappeared under siege, delivering a last-minute address from Downing Street. Drenched in light, hollow in tone, he insisted Britain was strong, stable, and united. The country laughed. Viewers flooded comment sections with disbelief. Protesters outside interrupted the live feed, their shouts echoing, "You built the prison, now you live in it." Starmer spoke of numbers, job recovery, investments, digital progress, but it sounded meaningless next to 7 million protesters and a bleeding economy. He tried to smile. His voice trembled. For a moment, he looked like a man realizing history had already written his ending. Inside Labour, resignations mounted. 3 cabinet members quit mid-speech. Media called it the fastest collapse of authority in British history. When the broadcast ended, Starmer didn't take questions. He simply turned, walked inside number 10, and closed the door. Silence. For the first time, even his allies stopped defending him. Outside, under flashing lights and broken umbrellas, Britain began to move on without him. Days passed, but the storm did not fade. It evolved. The digital ID protests became a national identity war. Families split, neighbors argued, workplaces divided. In northern towns, banners read "Freedom over fear." In the south, supporters of order defended government control. Clashes erupted daily, police were exhausted, parliament stayed empty. The UK fractured into 2 nations that no longer listened to each other. Church leaders called for peace, economists begged for calm. No one listened. The once united flag flew torn above Westminster, half soaked in rain, half burned at the edges. Surveys showed 71% of Britons believed civil unrest was inevitable. Yet amid chaos, strange new solidarity rose. Strangers fed each other, neighbors guarded streets, communities chose each other over politics. For the first time in centuries, the monarchy, the government, and the people were all disconnected. No one ruled. No one obeyed. The island that once led an empire now fought itself. At night, the camera moved across London. Sirens, smoke, silence, and one question echoing through the darkness. Is this how democracy dies? Not with revolution, but exhaustion. Dawn broke over a broken nation. Smoke drifted above Westminster, rising through the pale October sky, a warning the world could not ignore. Streets once bustling were now silent. Only anger remained. Parliament stood empty. The question tearing Britain apart was no longer who leads, but who remains to follow. The digital prison system still hummed beneath the surface, scanning, tracking, recording, as if the machine outlived its maker. Across cities from London to Leeds, people whispered this was only the beginning. When trust collapses, elections don't heal. They explode. What comes next could decide not just the government, but the soul of Britain. If you want to see power collapse in real time, subscribe now. The next chapter could change everything. As days turned into nights, the country refused to settle. The digital prison ID protests grew into more than a fight against technology. They became a battle over Britain's very identity. Streets that once thrived with life now rang with chants of defiance. From Leeds to Liverpool, Manchester to Newcastle, ordinary people blocked roads, held vigils, and staged sit-ins. Families argued at dinner tables over loyalty, neighbors eyed each other with suspicion, and workplaces became battlegrounds between those who supported government control and those who demanded freedom. In the north, the banners of freedom over fear flew from windows and lampposts. In the south, streets echoed with slogans calling for stability, law, and order. Public transport stopped on several lines as strikes spread, and emergency services struggled to respond. Grocery stores began limiting sales, fuel stations rationed petrol, and hospitals faced delays for non-emergency care. Every system seemed to teeter on collapse. Inside Westminster, number 10 remained empty. Starmer had retreated from the public eye, leaving a vacuum filled by rumors, leaks, and speculation. Cabinet members were either resigning or refusing to cooperate. MP whispered about secret meetings with opposition leaders, trying to form some kind of unified response, but trust had evaporated. The monarchy remained silent, observing from the palace, yet even Buckingham Palace could not stop the unraveling. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage capitalized on the chaos. Reform UK volunteers rallied in every city, distributing leaflets, hosting speeches, and live, streaming protests. Their message was simple but powerful: end the digital prison system, restore personal freedoms, and bring accountability back to government. Farage became the voice of a frustrated nation. Social media campaigns exploded. Videos of confrontations between citizens and law enforcement went viral. Overnight, hashtags like #FreedomNotPrison and #EndDigitalControl trended worldwide. The economy continued its freefall. Banks imposed strict withdrawal limits. Supermarkets ran out of essentials as panic buying surged. Traders called it a confidence collapse, warning that the ripple effects would not just affect Britain, but Europe and beyond. Inflation hit record highs. Families calculated every penny, bread lines stretched for blocks, fuel shortages became daily headlines. Even the government admitted the system was under unprecedented strain, but citizens called it punishment for resisting. The digital ID system, which had promised efficiency, protection, and modern governance, now became the symbol of oppression. Thousands were locked out of bank accounts, denied hospital entry, and refused welfare payments because they failed verification. People who once trusted the system felt betrayed. The nation no longer queued quietly. They protested loudly. Meanwhile, international eyes were fixed on Britain. Governments issued travel advisories, investors withdrew billions, and global media called the situation a historic collapse. European allies hesitated. NATO questioned Britain's reliability. And countries like Russia mocked the turmoil, while China silently documented every protest for state media coverage. The world had once looked to Britain for stability. Now, it watched in disbelief as the nation fell apart. As the protests intensified, communities began to self-organize. Mutual aid networks emerged overnight. Strangers shared food, electricity, and shelter. Neighborhood watch groups formed to protect local areas from looting and violence. People chose community over politics because the institutions they relied on had failed. The very fabric of society began to shift. In London, the scene was surreal. Smoke rose above the empty streets. Fire flickered in overturned trash cans, and the glow of cell phones illuminated faces full of determination and fear. Drone footage showed rivers of people marching through city centers. From above, the chaos looked organized, almost like a protest machine powered by desperation. Amidst the shouting, the chant persisted, "We are not prisoners. We are not data." Inside number 10, Starmer's office was quiet but tense. Advisors debated plans for a comeback, but each scenario seemed increasingly impossible. Leaks continued to flood the media. His public image was shattered. Resignations had left the Labour Party hollow, fractured, and leaderless. Ministers were either hiding, negotiating with opposition figures, or quietly preparing to abandon ship. The once mighty government was gone, leaving only the remnants of authority struggling to hold onto legitimacy. The digital prison ID system remained operational, humming silently in the background. But for most citizens, it had become irrelevant, a tool of oppression no one trusted. People spoke openly about ignoring it, circumventing it, or even sabotaging it. In towns and cities across Britain, digital rebellion joined physical protest. Hackers, both ethical and criminal, began targeting the system, freeing accounts, and exposing personal data held by the government. What was designed as a tool for control became a target of the public's wrath. The media followed every moment. Live broadcasts of confrontations, interviews with everyday citizens, and breaking news segments ran non-stop. For the first time, television, social media, and radio didn't just report events, they amplified them. Citizens felt empowered, emboldened, and defiant. The line between news and activism blurred. By the second week, Britain felt unrecognizable. Trains barely ran, airports delayed flights, courts postponed hearings, Parliament remained empty, a silent monument to the collapse of governance. Violence was sporadic but consistent, and police forces were stretched thin. Government orders were ignored, local councils improvised, and communities operated autonomously. Despite all this, a strange sense of unity appeared. People who had never met before shared food, provided shelter, and defended one another from looters. In towns where the storm had raged the longest, communities adapted, creating their own systems of law and order. Some even called it a renaissance of local democracy, a return to human trust rather than reliance on distant institutions. Yet the question hung heavy in the air: could Britain recover? The digital prison ID system still existed, monitoring, recording, and scanning, but it no longer commanded respect. Institutions had failed. Trust had evaporated, and without trust, no leader could govern, no election could stabilize, and no system could control the people. Night after night, sirens wailed across London, fires smoldered in alleys. Protests never fully ended. The nation moved as if caught in a permanent storm. Questions that had no answers dominated conversations. Who can lead? Who can rebuild? Can Britain survive its own rebellion? As winter approached, the landscape of Britain had changed forever. Streets bore the marks of struggle, communities had reorganized, and citizens had learned to survive without reliance on government structures. The monarchy watched silently, the Labour Party remained fractured, Reform UK grew in power and influence, and Nigel Farage became both a symbol of hope and division. The island, once known for order, now existed in a state of constant tension, balancing between chaos and self-rule. And in the midst of it all, one truth remained clear: the digital prison ID system, the spark of rebellion, and the collapse of leadership had ignited a reckoning. Britain was no longer a country that obeyed quietly. It had awakened, fractured, and demanded change. Across cities from London to Glasgow, from Leeds to Bristol, people whispered the same thing: this is only the beginning. When trust collapses, systems fail, and nations fracture, nothing is certain. Elections won't solve it, leaders cannot control it, and the choices made now could determine not just the government, but the very soul of Britain. The storm had not ended, it had transformed. And the next chapter, whether of recovery, further collapse, or complete reinvention, was yet to be written. Subscribe now to follow the unfolding story of Britain's most dramatic crisis, where power, technology, and rebellion collide. The nation's future hangs in the balance, and every moment counts.